A man at the height of power, sitting alone before dawn, writing to himself like he's losing a war against his own nature. That man is Marcus Aurelius, and the war he was fighting is the same one you are fighting right now. Drop into Marcus writing alone before dawn. Armies outside, empire awake, and he's battling himself on paper. The most powerful man alive didn't trust himself without daily practice. What does that say about the rest of us? One of them will break something open in you that no motivational video ever has. Flows into the identity transformation premise. 12 months from today, you will either be a slightly older version of who you are now, or someone your current self would barely recognize. If you apply even one of these disciplines with total seriousness for 90 days, your life becomes unrecognizable. Most people confuse motion for progress. They read, consume, plan, discuss, and change nothing. The problem is never information. It is never motivation. It is the gap between knowing and being. There is one discipline on this list, I'll tell you which one later, that Marcus Aurelius called the most dangerous of all. Not because it's hard, because it feels so easy that most people skip it entirely. The modern disease, waking up and handing your mind to the world before forming a single thought of your own. Marcus's morning practice from the Meditations, preparing for the world before the world prepares you. Hidden psychological benefit, identity priming. You are not just planning your day, you are deciding who you are before external forces decide for you. The 3-question morning practice, what's in my control, what's not, who do I choose to be? Curiosity gap planted. But morning intention alone is not enough, because by 10 a.m., something happens to almost everyone, and it quietly destroys everything they built in the morning. The Meditations passage that stings, work as a human being, not as a victim of circumstance. Psychological depth. Complaining is not emotional release. It is identity reinforcement. Every complaint locks you deeper into the identity of someone things happen to. The avoidance task ritual. Do the hardest thing first, without negotiation. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. Transition curiosity gap. Discipline 2 eliminates the complaint, but discipline 3 goes deeper. It forces you to face the one person you've been lying to the longest. Evening journaling, not as celebration, but as honest reckoning. The Stoic concept of prosouche, attention to the self, as a daily practice. Self-prediction. Over months, you begin to see your failures coming. You know your patterns, your triggers, your escape routes, and you can cut them off before they happen. The difference between self-criticism and self-honesty. One destroys, one builds. The paper versus screen distinction and why it matters neurologically. What Marcus discovered in his journals and what you will discover in yours is something that will disturb you at first and then set you completely free. Concrete practice. 3 written questions every evening, no exceptions. The Stoic practice of voluntary hardship. Seneca's poverty days, Marcus's cold baths, and simple meals. Hidden psychological benefit, fear inoculation. When you choose discomfort daily, you are systematically dismantling the power that comfort has over your decisions. You stop making choices based on what feels easy and start making them based on what is right. The deeper truth, most people's entire lives are quietly shaped by the desire to avoid discomfort. Their career choices, their relationships, their silences. References, the morning intention from Discipline 1. This is where morning intention meets its first real test. Practical application, 1 deliberate discomfort per day, escalating over 30 days. But choosing physical discomfort is only the beginning, because the most dangerous comfort of all isn't physical, it's mental. Ancient problem, modern epidemic, Marcus guarded against flattery and manipulation. We guard against distraction and outrage. The Stoic concept of fantasia, impressions that enter the mind, and the discipline of not accepting them automatically. Hidden psychological benefit. Cognitive sovereignty. The person who controls what enters their mind controls what they become. Attention is not just a resource, it is the architect of identity. The social media/news cycle as the modern equivalent of the corrupting court of Rome. Marcus had a specific practice for testing whether a thought deserved space in his mind. It takes 3 seconds, and it works. Practical gatekeeping, the Stoic test for impressions. Pause, examine, to accept or reject. And this discipline connects to something Marcus wrote about that most people never discuss, a specific kind of silence that the Stoics considered more powerful than any speech. The Stoic practice of memento mori, remembering death not with fear, but with clarity. Marcus returning to this theme obsessively in the Meditations, not from depression, but from focus. Hidden psychological benefit. Priority surgery. Nothing clarifies what matters faster than confronting what ends. The person who lives with death in mind wastes nothing, no time, no energy, no relationship. The brutal contrast. Most people spend their lives avoiding the thought of death, and as a result, spend their time on things that don't matter, shift from philosophical to viscerally personal, address the viewer directly about what they are currently tolerating in their life that they would not tolerate on their last day. The morning intention question becomes deeper. Who do I choose to be today? Lands differently when you know today could be the last. Discipline 6 teaches you what to eliminate. Discipline 7 teaches you what to build. And this is the one I warned you about at the beginning. Earlier, I asked why intelligent people know what to do and still don't do it. Here's the answer Marcus Aurelius lived by, and almost no one talks about. Habit-based self-improvement fails because it targets behavior. Identity-based transformation succeeds because it targets being. Marcus didn't try to develop disciplined habits. He tried to become a disciplined person. The difference is everything. The Stoic concept of prohairesis, the faculty of choice, the core of identity, as the true target of all self-work. Hidden psychological benefit, behavioral gravity. When your identity shifts, the behaviors follow automatically, not through willpower, but through internal consistency. You don't have to force yourself to act like the person you are. You just act. Nombre, the most dangerous discipline mentioned in the opening. It's not cold showers or journaling. It is the daily, quiet, unsexy act of deciding who you are and refusing to negotiate with anything that contradicts it. What Marcus discovered in his journals, the disturbing truth, is that he kept failing the same tests, the same weaknesses, year after year. And his response was not shame, it was commitment. The journal wasn't proof of his failure, it was proof of his refusal to stop. Identity transformation without the next discipline, however, is just philosophy. Discipline 8 is where it becomes permanent. Nietzsche borrowed the term, but Marcus Aurelius lived it 2 millennia earlier. Amor fati, love of fate, not as passive acceptance, but as active embrace of reality. Hidden psychological benefit, resistance elimination. Every ounce of energy spent resisting reality is energy stolen from responding to it. The person who loves what happens, including the hard things, has access to their full power in every moment. The distinction between acceptance and surrender. Amor fati is not giving up. It is refusing to waste yourself on the war against what already is. Marcus faced something in 166 AD that tested this discipline beyond anything most of us will ever experience. When what happened, what and how he responded, is one of the most instructive moments in all of human history. the Antonine Plague, empire-wide catastrophe, and Marcus's response as a living example of amor fati. Practical application, the daily reframe. This happened. What is the best thing I can do with this? The specific Stoic silence, not the absence of noise, but the discipline of not speaking until thought is complete. Marcus's consistent warnings against excessive talking, gossip, and performance. Hidden psychological benefit, signal clarity. The person who speaks less thinks more. The person who protects silence creates the conditions where real insight becomes possible, where the noise of the world stops drowning out the signal of their own reason. The modern epidemic of performed thinking, social media, hot takes, irreactive opinions, as the opposite of Stoic silence. Deep work as the practical modern application. Uninterrupted blocks of focused effort as the highest form of Stoic discipline in the knowledge age. Callback to discipline. 5. Guarding the mind. Silence is not just about what you say. It's about what you allow in. 9 disciplines, each one ancient, each one proven, but none of them matter without the 10th. And the 10th is the one that determines whether you actually do any of this. Marcus, during the Antonine Plague, empire crumbling, personal grief, and he kept writing, kept practicing, kept returning. The final and most important discipline, not perfection, but return. The ability to fail, fall, drift, and come back without drama, without self-pity, without delay. Hidden psychological benefit. Compound transformation. One return after failure is worth more than 10 flawless days, because the person who returns has built something no streak can build, resilience of identity. The Stoics did not believe in perfection, they believed in practice. Marcus wrote about failing the same tests for decades, and he kept showing up anyway. Yushu, the discipline of return is what separates people who transform from people who try and quit. Call back to the opening premise. 12 months from today, if you practice the discipline of return, you will be someone your current self would barely recognize, not because you were perfect, because you refused to stop.